The next Wingcraft update is just around the corner, and I was invited to be one of the first players to try it out. So in this video, I'll be going over everything that's new, from client-side loot chests to quest updates, and later on, I'll be interviewing somebody from the content team as well. You'll have to stick around to find out who that is, but before we begin, here's a quick disclaimer. Everything you see in this video is in very early beta and is subject to change before release. If you have hero rank, you'll be able to try out these features for yourself in the hero beta very soon. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. It's free and you can always change your mind later. To show you everything, we need to go back to the very beginning, because right after you complete the tutorial, Tazim will now be waiting for you in Ragni, and this is where you'll get a first look at the brand new content book. There's this new handy item we were all given on our way here, the content book. It will display most things you can do in this world, quests, caves, and more. Tazim will prompt you to open your content book and begin your first quest, which will be the only thing available at this time, but later on, the content book will show you everything Wingcraft has to offer, including the brand new cave content, which we'll take a look at shortly. For now, let's talk about one of the biggest changes in this patch, client-side loot chests. To be able to understand these changes, let me first explain how Wingcraft's loot chests currently work. The loot quality of a chest depends on the time it's been since it was last looted by you or another player, and for this reason Wingcraft has always had a problem, especially for early game players, where commonly open chests like the ones on the Emerald Trail will never really give you anything interesting. As every chest is now unique to your client, somebody else looting a chest right before you will no longer affect your loot quality. This means newer players can find better loot earlier on than they previously would have. To balance this change, every loot chest now has a 30-minute cooldown before it can be opened by you again on the same class. Now, back to the caves. Caves have always been important in Wingcraft because of the rare and better loot that can be found within them, but with this patch, caves have been made into proper content. Before you enter a cave, you'll be able to see its name, its progress, which is how much of the cave you have completed, and its loot quality, which I explained a little earlier. Cave loot chests will also be locked behind a short task such as kill mobs. When you complete a cave for the first time, an additional chest will appear, rewarding you with some combat XP and items, so if caves weren't already worth exploring, they definitely are now. But let's talk about dungeons. Certain dungeon rooms previously required you to slay mobs and take the tokens that they drop to the door to advance, but that system is no more. Tokens have been removed and the door to advance will now open automatically when you reach the required number of kills. Also, the Lost Sanctuary dungeon is being completely reworked and renamed to the Time Lost Sanctum. It isn't ready to play yet, but here's a small teaser. Two new items have been added to housing. The first is the Tome Bookshelf, which is similar to the Misc Bucket, but for all of your mastery tomes. And the second is the microphone. When stood by the microphone, you can use special effects and broadcast your chat messages to everybody on your housing. Speaking of which, chat has also been reworked and will now look much different on the latest versions of Minecraft. Here's a side-by-side comparison for a couple of different ranks. Following the early game improvements, you'll be able to speak to Tazim once more in the reworked Infested Plants quest. Previously, Ope would prompt you to visit Deathless after giving him the cure he needs, but he will now instead refuse to pay you for your service and prompt you to visit the mayor of Nivla's very own town, Alekin. That's not all though. Elemental exercise has also been reworked and now begins with you learning how to use an elemental weapon before facing Tazim in a duel. After that, a mini-boss will spawn outside of Deathless and it's up to you to take it down. Another brand new quest has been added where Ope instructs you to buy a supply crate from the trade market and bring it back to Alekin. For completing this quest, you'll be given access to a new fast travel between Alekin and Deathless. These quest changes have also been made, but the other reworked and added quests aren't quite ready to show yet. And here's a list of every other quest that has received minor tweaks. Finally, a bunch of changes have been made to the ability tree, and who better to explain them than the man in charge? Xavier, what's new?
The whole Archer tree had a lot of structural problems, and Trapper was really lacking. The arrangement of the archetypes is different from this new layout. Sharpshooter gets an ability called Twain's Arc. It's like the railgun, where you crouch and you get this cool melee attack that's like a laser beam that you can snipe people with. There's an upgrade to it now called Phasing Beam. It charges faster and it can pierce enemies. Trapper was the archetype that I felt lacked the most identity. It gets the traps, it gets the roots, which are these vines on the ground underneath enemies that slow them and do damage. And so I wanted to give it more animal friends. A snake that comes out of bryophyte roots. And you have the crow, which comes out of the traps. So now you've got
That's awesome.
all these little guys running around and helping you in fights. And it's super fun. Let's talk about Shaman. I focused very heavily on Ritualist when it came to Shaman. Seeking Totem made your totem walk towards enemies, and it was not optional. This is a more minor change, but it's still pretty important. The totem follows you instead of enemies. This is the new ability, but instead of the totem lasting 30 seconds, it lasts 1 second. But it does its effects for every tick while it's alive. Now you've got the totem bomb like nuke, which is cool. This is the other new ability. Haunting Memory is very cool. When I switch masks, there it goes. But also the mask actually attaches to enemies when it hits them. If the mask is attached to an enemy, you can't use it until it comes back to you. So now there's just more options for the player.
And the best part is this isn't even everything. You can find a complete list of all of the changes made to the ability tree and endgame with the patch changelog link that's down in the description. Thanks for watching this video and enjoy the update.